back to Bright Brains. Today we're diving into one of the most pressing and polarizing topics in the United States, illegal immigration. Joining me once again is Jose, who grew up in this country as an undocumented immigrant and later gained U.S. citizenship through military service. In our last conversation, Jose shared his powerful personal journey, what it was like growing up without legal status, the challenges he faced, and how enlisting in the military ultimately changed his life. But today we're shifting our focus to the bigger picture, the current state of immigration in America. We'll be talking about policy changes, the impact of illegal immigration on society, and what it's like to navigate this issue from the perspective of someone who has lived it firsthand. Regardless of where you stand on this issue, this is a conversation worth having. So let's get into it. Welcome back, Jose.
Hey, thanks, Isaac. I really appreciate the invitation back to another episode. And yeah, man, I'm ready for whatever questions you have. I know you sent me a couple of them ahead of time, so definitely got some time to do a little bit of extra research, especially about with everything that's going on right now.
Awesome. All right, Dan, before we begin, just reintroduce yourself to our audience and just tell a little bit about your background.
Gotcha. So I'm Jose. I've been in the military for approximately 11 years. I originally came to the States as an undocumented illegal alien. I was undocumented for 13 years, the majority of my childhood. And then around the age of 17, 18, I was actually able to be sponsored by my stepdad to gain my legal citizenship. Not legal citizenship, my legal residency. Navigated the legal system all by myself, for myself and my mom. And then that's actually what gave me the opportunity to be able to enter the military. And then as of recently, just, been doing this whole thing right now, just side hustling on podcasts, trying to bring these issues and awareness to everybody and getting on whatever platforms I can to be able to help out as many people as possible.
Awesome, man. All right. So obviously, man, a lot has changed since last we talked. What's your whole opinion and thoughts on the current Trump administration and just the current state of the U.S. in general in regards to undocumented people and to Latino people?
Man, so a lot has changed within the last 6 months, 6 to 8 months between the end of the presidential election, the actual taking of office, and now. So my views with President Trump, like I said, well, before I begin, anything I say is my personal opinion, doesn't reflect anything with the military, but there's even with that freedom, I still have limitations on what I can say about the commander in chief of the military. But like how things are, it's devastating. It's really devastating because even though it seems like us in the military, we have some benefit to how the entire administration is kind of working right now, it's still to a detriment, right? Because it's kind of a little bit of duality, because people think because we're in the military, you have to blindly follow the orders of the commander in chief, of your squad leaders, of your supervisors and stuff. And it's like, that's not necessarily the case. Like at any point, you can literally invoke what you basically swear into, right? Like the oath of enlistment. And the same thing with like officers. It's like there's literally that very specific clause that says to protect this country against both foreign and domestic. So at a certain point, it's just like this is a domestic attack. And it's like I said, his views don't reflect anything on my outcome. His views don't reflect anything on my way of my values and morals. It's literally an attack on the people it's up. And my oath wasn't to the president. My oath was to protecting of the people. So it's really difficult to like I said, grasping that duality, but also at the same time, being a prior undocumented and an illegal alien, as some people would probably still call me, and having to be able to vouch for my people, whether they're Mexican or from any other Latin country, is like, I'll vouch for them, dude. I'll vouch for my people as a whole. I won't vouch for an individual, because it's the exact same thing kind of when we talked last time, man. It's like every person has their own reasons on why they came here. There's no one defining factor or one defining situation that's gonna bring them here, because it's what's easily available, Like I said, my experience is completely different from anybody else's experience, and everybody else's experience is always going to be unique. And the fact that the current administration is wanting to encompass everybody, to literally wrangle everybody up and say, oh, every single illegal immigrant, regardless of, I don't even want to say regardless, every single immigrant with a specific level of skin tone is a criminal. They're only here to be able to cause problems, to leech off the government, to bask in the welfare that is so abundantly available to all of these thriving communities and all of these other people. So, it's a little difficult. It's a little difficult to kind of answer that question without going into very specific details, man. But yeah.
Shout out to our sponsor, Bad Product, the modern lifestyle brand that specializes in streetwear apparel and accessories. Their dedication to values such as self-care promote an optimistic vibe that is sure to spread awareness, and we are always happy to endorse a small business that ultimately shares common beliefs. Go check out Bad Product for yourselves. They stay with multiple collections, great deals, and specials. Simply use our coupon code VAGABARD for 10% off your final purchase. For the best quality, choose the Bad Product. We appreciate the support, and without further ado, please do stay tuned and enjoy the show.
Yeah, it is. What gets me is just like how quick it's happened. And also it seems like there's no real pushback. It feels like we're in dark times. Like, what have you seen on your end? When I say what have you seen, like what has changed in regards to, undocumented immigrants? Is there like a lot more increase of hatred that you feel going on against the people? I guess I'm just asking, what's their opinion like on the whole, like kind of feeling right now?
Oh yeah, no, I get you. With that right now, it honestly reminds me of 2010, 2011. So this is it's funnily enough is that this actually did happen during the Obama administration too. It was when I think it was the Arizona governor, they started basically instituting the same thing, like the stop and frisk law for anybody being quote unquote suspicious individuals who could be here illegally. So it's like I was 16, 17 at that time, like I said, still undocumented. So it's bringing back a little bit of like that feeling and that like desperation to like, oh man, like I'm going to have to start carrying on my passport. I'm going to have to start carrying around documentation showing I'm a US citizen. But it's not necessarily as like that feeling isn't as strong as it was back then, because like now I actually have something to back me, right? It's like, all right, I can present my military ID. Like, even though there's been situations where US citizens, like African-American, Black citizens have actually been called out for, oh, you're not in the military. It's like, it feels a little bit like that too. It's like, even if I were to present my DOD ID showing I'm in the military, it still wouldn't be enough, because just simply for my skin tone or maybe the way I say certain things. And then same thing with the passport. They could say it's like, oh, you stole this from somebody. This isn't even a real passport. They can confiscate it and do that without due process, just because of the situation. Those are what a lot of not only veterans are living through, but just generally anybody who looks a specific type of way is currently encountering. And like I said earlier, just a little bit ago, was that whole situation in 2010, 2011 with that it's really difficult, because I'm still far separated. Being on the East Coast, being in a military town, I'm still far separated from a lot of the situations and things that happen with the way that undocumented people are being treated, because this region of the country, in Northern Virginia, well, not Northern Virginia, in South Central Virginia, in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, it's the only other Latin communities, the only people from that speak Spanish are either Puerto Rican, Dominican, maybe some Cuban out here, but Mexican, other Venezuelans, there's none. It's like seldom have I seen it. But what I see on my feed from my cousins, what I see on my feed from friends all over, either in Texas, Arizona, Colorado, it's like they're being stopped and frisked. They're uploading things that are happening maybe 2-3 blocks down the street. And it's like, those are things that are affecting me, because it's like, hey, I'm in that same boat. I'm that same individual, but I can barely do what I think I can do on my side to be able to help them. But it's still one of those things where it's affecting you to the point where it's like, hey, you have to spread this information. You have to keep letting people know, hey, you have rights. Even if you're undocumented, you still have rights. Even if you're a legal green card holder, you're still able to reside in the country legally. Even if you're a U.S. citizen and they're still questioning, is like, there's no necessity for you to be questioned. You're a U.S. citizen. But like I said, the current administration isn't buying by the legal presidents to be able to allow people, to let people be tried illegally in a situation. So they're just wrangling up everybody and treating them like criminals.
Yeah, it's crazy. You mentioned about 2010 and 2011. A lot of people don't realize is that Obama, they called him the deporter in chief. He actually had deported, I think up until that point, he was like the main deporter of people. Yeah, and it kind of slipped under the radar because, he had a lot of popularity. He was like the liberal messiah or whatever, and nobody really went after him for that. But I wonder now because, like, for example, right, you remember how during the first Trump term, there was the kids in cages, right? And everybody was like, oh, these kids in cages. But when Biden got in office, they still had those kids in cages, but everybody was just kind of silent about it. And that's what gets me is the inconsistency. When a Republican is in office, people will speak up about whatever wrong is happening. But then when a Democrat gets in office, they just kind of go silent and don't say anything. Well, what's your whole take on that?
Honestly, man, that's a media bias. That's a lot of media bias that I've seen it both in Spanish speaking news, the same thing with any conservative, right leaning or left leaning Democratic, how liberal, however you want to put it. There's a lot of media bias that really perpetuates really bad stories that make other people look bad, right? In like, to answer that whole situation with Obama and both Trump on his first term, it's like a politician is a politician, regardless of how we want to look at it. The party that they serve, the party that they represent, or the party that they're backing, they're still a politician. Self-interest is one of those biggest things that politics has always been the biggest part of. So the fact that you mentioned that President Obama being the great deporter is like, that's a very true thing. Is like within his first term, I think he was close to deporting like 1 million people, 1 million undocumented people from all over the country. Not just predominantly Hispanic locations like Texas, California, Arizona, New Mexico. Is like, no, it was all over the country. And that's one thing that, like you said, it gets swept under the rug very easily. And then yet there's a whole other level of criticism that Obama didn't receive just because of his position and his party bias. That's the biggest thing, is that party bias with Democrats. So to see the fact that Republicans, it is so, playing a little bit of devil's advocate, it is a little bit biased and really really unbalanced, the way that the media does portray the Republican Party in most ways, and justifiably so, because of the way that it's been representative of a lot of the both racial, the anti-economic standards, all of the far conservative things that are limiting to the liberties of people, versus the Democrat Party doing the exact same thing in different ways. But it's like, no, it's the Democrats. They're always fighting for the family. They're always fighting for the people. It's like, that's not necessarily true. There's been a lot of Democrats and Democrat-driven back bills and things in Congress or in the Senate that have caused a lot of problems for people. Like, let's literally take, for example, Clinton, President Bill Clinton in 1996. He signed one of the undocumented deportation acts. That thing caused anybody and everybody who had any type of charge, any type of federal felony charge, to be deported regardless. And that was one of the issues that I had talked about previously about deported veterans. And in that same situation, people get wrangled up because of the necessity, right? The quote unquote necessity for these new laws, new ways to be able to try to help out and keep law and order. But they don't really take a look at the repercussions of who it's going to affect. So the bias in the media, it causes a lot of these things to be able to see both parties as one as being the good party and one as being the bad party. But in reality, they're both very biased. They have their goods and their bads, but the media representation is what causes a lot of that vilification of the Republican Party. To an extent, yes, but at the same time, it doesn't give them their due process to be able to defend themselves. Like, forget about the fact that it's looked at as a very racist party. They're very smart individuals. That's what people don't see about that, because they're so always vilified. You don't see about what's really going on behind in the political spectrum, in the political push.
Yeah, you mentioned deported veterans. So there are people who served in the military and have been deported.
Yeah, I've actually done 2 interviews. One with the spokesperson for Repatriate Our Patriots. She actually was very close to being deported. She actually technically, after concluding 2 tours in Iraq, she was here in the United States illegally. That by the way that the laws are put out, illegally, because between the time from that she enlisted to the time that she got out, she only had her green card. And in that process, she was actually attempting to be able to solidify her citizenship, right? So as military members, we're able to receive an expedite or even like waivered time frame to be able to get our citizenship, like in consideration because of the service, versus a regular citizen who has their green card. They still have to wait 5 years minimum to be able to apply for citizenship. So, and that was one of the most interesting things when she told me her story. It's like, how do you send somebody to war to go fight for a country that they've known that they've lived in for the majority of their life, lose their paperwork multiple times, bring them back home with PTSD, shell shock, however you want to call it, just a whole plethora of not only physical, emotional, but psychological problems, and then basically tell them like, oh, sorry, you have to go through the entire regular process of trying to attain both your green card again, which she wasn't even able to because her husband, who was a U.S. citizen, had to sponsor her. Things like that. And it's like, this whole thing is a problem. And then the other interview was this man served in Desert Storm. He was out there in the first portion of Desert Storm, and in the same situation, he always thought that he was a U.S. citizen because the perpetuation of like, oh, you join the military, as soon as you finish boot camp, you are an automatic U.S. citizenship. There's nothing that says that immediately. You're still subject to the laws of immigrations, the Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, whichever one, however you want to call immigration, the immigration process. And he wasn't aware of that. Same thing. He did his 8-10 years of service, came out. He did one tour part of Desert Storm, one tour part of Iraqi freedom, and I think like the initial invasions of Afghanistan. Same thing. He came out, he did his time in service, and then by the time that he got out, he didn't know that he didn't even have his own green card. Got in trouble due to extenuating circumstances. I'll put it like that. But it was something out of his control, and he got put in jail for 10 years, and then immediately he got deported after he did his 10 years in jail. So it's interesting how the what do you call it? The country that wants people to join, right? The country that perpetuates the patriotism to their youth, to the families, and to the people around them, isn't able to be. It doesn't put its hand out to be able to take care of their service members once they leave, especially those that still have that belief that as soon as they finish boot camp or as soon as they join the military, their U.S. citizenship is there, and it's not. And that's one of those things where, like I said, I've tried to help out to be able to inform people with both the podcast, but also with the interviews, to let them know, it's like, hey, there's people out there that have gone through this whole situation, even as veterans, even as active duty service members, and are currently fighting to be able to get people from all over the world, not just from Mexico, from South America and everything, but like from all over the world that are caught in that situation where their service is basically null and void due to a mistake or due to an existing policy from a previous administration.
That's crazy. The idea of deporting a veteran who served in a war, that's evil. I mean, that's genuinely crazy. I had no clue that actually happened. You know, that is wild. I feel like once you are in the military, and especially if you serve overseas, going through like, you know, Iraq and Desert Storm, seeing what all those soldiers have gone through, and then coming back home and being deported, that's no excuse for that, man. None whatsoever. That's wild. I had no clue that happened. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had an experience where you were stopped by ICE or law enforcement? And what advice would you give to young people or just people in general if they're being stopped by ICE or immigration?
Honestly, I can't say recently. Somehow I've been fortunate. Luck is a very specific thing, right? But I've been really fortunate to actually like avoid a lot of those encounters, whether it be with immigration or even like law enforcement. Like maybe one time where I had one ticket due to expired license plates or an expired driver's license, and then one for like maybe going 10 miles over the speed limit. But I've never had that encounter where it's like, hey, we're going to go ahead and start asking you all these specific questions because you look very ethnic. You look very specific country of origin, and we have a suspicion that you could be illegal, that you could be associated with anybody. So, like I said, so I can't really speak too much on that experience, but one thing I can tell you is the exact same thing, like all types of information. You have rights. I know I have rights. So if especially during this time frame, if that were to happen to me, I can understand. I know and I understand that. One, always keep quiet. One thing, and it sounds really criminally and like, it sounds really, really criminally minded. But, and I say this to a lot of people, what they don't know can't hurt you, right? So and it works very well because like there's things that the police don't need to know. There's a lot of things about you, your information, your current situation that they don't need to know. Do they need to know your name? Yeah, possibly. Do they need to know where you're coming from? If you have a U.S. legal citizenship, if you're in the country legally, not necessarily, unless you're actually committing a crime. Are you being suspicious? Are they being suspicious of you because they think you committed a crime? Got it. What's the reasonable suspicion of the crime committed? Whether it's in a vehicle, whether it's on foot, whether it's entering or exiting an establishment. And it's like, what's the actual probable cause? So the biggest advice, like I said, I can't say from my own experience, but I can definitely spread it and understand is that you have your rights. Keep quiet, invoke your Fifth Amendment right to be able to maintain your silence. Know that anything and everything that they say or you say can be used against you. That's why the fifth right exists. Know that you're not allowed, that you don't have to consent to a search. There's no necessity for them to be able to search you unless you're being criminally indicted. You're suspicious for an actual crime, and they can actually lawfully articulate that crime. And then on top of that, don't resist. It seems really counterintuitive. They're going to be screaming at you from all the videos that I've seen, and then from a couple encounters from families and friends that they told me. It's like they're going to try to incriminate you as a person resisting. Keep repeating, I'm not resisting. Follow through with whatever orders, how absurdly dramatic or even apprehensive they're committing their orders or completing their orders. It seems really counterintuitive, but follow to the extent that you're allowed to, and know that you can always seek legal counsel, whether it's established, whether it's being provided to you by the court, or you reach outside to an actual law firm, to a lawyer or legal representative. You have those rights to be able to be represented in any type of legal court, and you can always contest, and you can always appeal any type of decisions. Understand that, because yes, the badge protects them. They have certain qualified immunity due to the nature of their job, but they're not immune to be held accountable for whatever actions they do, whether it's in the eyes of the law, in the line of their duty, or in the suspicion of an investigation.
So when somebody gets picked up by ICE, what happens? Are they immediately like just sent back to Mexico? Or is there like any kind of like due process or investigation? Do they get like a court case? Or are they just like, boom, you're out of here?
So normally, yes. Normally, they're just taken in. They're technically held to be tried, right? So they're being held in a jail or in a facility to be able to go through their legal process. And then once they're found, either what do you call it? Once they're found legally guilty, I guess. Yeah. Once they're found guilty for whatever immigration crime it is or whatever other crime, they'll serve their time. Most people will serve their time, either local jail, prison, whatever it is. And then after that process concludes, once they serve their criminal time, then they get deported. So it could actually be years. Normally, it could actually be years before people are even sent back to their country of origin. And that's one of those things that I think a lot of people still don't understand about the legal process, is that is at a certain point, the system is meant to be able to keep them incarcerated for a certain amount of time to be able to basically pay back. Like how I see it is a way to be able to pay back the legal costs that were incurred by the state, by the country, by the county to hold this criminal, right? Because you are a criminal in their eyes in that situation. You are guilty. But to be held and then deported immediately is a whole different process that's been changing recently. There's been multiple reports from from a lot of the mainstream media outlets. There's been reports from independent journalists and everybody saying that they're opening Gitmo, they're opening Guantanamo Bay, the one place that Obama tried to close down, basically as an internment camp at this point, just like in World War II with the Japanese or anybody from Asian descent. It's like we're really reverting back the time in the way that situations are happening with this whole situation. So now, instead of being deported or being criminally held or going in front of an immigration judge, now they're just being processed into into the correctional system, into a correctional system, and basically being held there for what's, I guess, essentially the 14th or 15th Amendment. I can't remember which one is basically legal slavery at this point. They're finding a way to be able to get their money's worth within the correctional system, to be able to make sure that whatever machination, this mechanism that is the whole entire street to jail and back to street again, and then back in jailing is basically working. So right now we don't know what's going on. There's a certain amount of detention facilities being built again down in Texas. My friend, he's from down there. He's telling me a lot of things that are happening between the border of between the border in McAllen, Brownsville, going to San Antonio. He's telling me that there's 1,000,001 new immigration stops, and then there's a lot of construction going on in the border area of all these detention centers. So it's like, right now, it's the whole immigration process isn't going to be just, it's never been a catch and release either. It's going to be it's going to go from due process, criminal time, and then deportation to now just indefinite holding. And then I think that's the biggest problem with the way that the thing is working with the way that things currently were, and then that are actually going to be like.
Yeah, people don't realize that prison is a business. It's the prison industrial complex. And what I see, the fact that they actually hold them in jail or prison and for a number of years before sending them back, that's a cash grab. They're there to make money off of that. And that's the crazy thing. Like, if someone says, oh, they don't like the illegals being here, well, if that's the case, just pick them up and send them back. But the fact that they hold them, and, that's money that the government has to pay. And that's also money that they make off of prison labor. So, yeah, it is slavery. It's really wild. That's one way to look at this that a lot of people aren't really thinking about. And it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. I know there was a CEO, I wish I had the comment, but the CEO of one of these major prison companies has been like on the record saying this is like one of the best times to be in this business, and it's like the fact that there are people who get gleeful over what's happened about this, I find to be so disgusting. What can like people who like me or people who care, what can they do to help?
Well, first off, like you said, informing yourself. The fact that you know about that CEO that's literally gleeful about his bottom line basically increasing, or I guess decreasing, because now he has more produced free labor is that. So that CEO or one of these multiple other the prison industrial complex companies like GME, which is more than likely the one you're talking about, is just informing yourself on where your taxpayer dollars are going to. A lot of these supplemental locations, a lot of these places that are being turned into correctional facilities or any type of prison holding locations are being funded by tax incentives. So the tax incentive is the fact that anything that they can provide to the state will be able to basically make that a tax deduction, especially if the state already taxes any type of business or any type of people. They're basically getting a cut and a deduction cut on their taxes that they're reporting and saying, like, oh, this member has basically produced this much amount of revenue within the industrial complex, and then our entire criminal numbers basically have decreased because there's less violence, there's less theft, there's less violent, there's less criminals on the street. But that's not the case. Those are numbers are conflated. So it's informing yourself about the situation, right? That's one of those issues. Spreading the word about how all of this affects not only just you as a minority or as a person of ethnic descent or anybody in an outsourced community, right? It's how it can actually affect everybody in the entire country. It's trying to inform as many people that are willing to listen, because not everybody is always going to be open to the situation or to even be able to listen to what's happening. So, and then on top of that is volunteering the best way that you can, spreading the news, spreading any type of social media post is showing ways that you're backing the movements, backing up anybody that could be affected by this whole situation, both with ICE, with the detention centers, with the separation of families, and then especially with these new administrative bills and executive orders that are being placed out by the current administration. Is like, because eventually it's going to affect us all, whether it's now after these 30 days. We have already seen how we've already been to a detriment in a worsening situation. What's going to happen in the next 6 months if people don't continue to try to inform other people? And I think the worst part about having and trying to inform people is that the ones that don't see it right now are the ones that are going to see it later and then are going to wonder, man, well, what could I have done to be able to try to fix the situation, if they even think that, right? Because it's not an issue. It's never an issue until it affects you, right? So I think those are the best things that you can keep doing. Like I said, it's just trying to keep yourself informed and inform as many people as you can.
What do you make of the high percentage of Latino people who voted for Trump? They say like 46% of Latinos voted for Trump, 54% of Latino men, and a lot of people were shocked by that. So what's your whole take on that?
Man, so I'm gonna be very, very candid, very direct about this one. My thoughts on those type of people is very, very specific, because they think that their skin tone, and I do mean their skin tone, their very lighter skin tone, is the one thing that's going to save them from being deported. I've seen it. I understand it. I know. Like I said earlier, I'm very ambiguous. I don't know whether people see me as either Middle Eastern, Indian, Italian, some sort of Mediterranean. It's just like I said, been very fortunate, and they think their skin tone is going to save them, but it only takes one or two people to be able to call them out. Because although you may not look like you're from Mexico, you may not look like you're from Venezuela, you may not look like from somebody from South America or the Middle East, but there's a lot of telling situations, and that's not going to save you. So in reality, like, honestly, I'm more disappointed for the people that thinking that because you tend to side with the enemy is going to have mercy on you in that situation. It's like, that's not the case. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It's very ironic, because I've known for years a lot of people that were undocumented for a good amount of decades, and then the moment that they receive their green card, not even being a U.S. citizen, it's just their green card, it's like, I don't speak Spanish. And I'll even say it with an accent, man. Like, I am U.S. citizen. I am American now. I'm out here making good, because I am good. I'm American. It's like, no, it doesn't save you, man. It just keeps pulling out. It just keeps pushing out that hypocrisy of that you never really cared about your culture to begin with. And it's one of those cultural situations too, where it's like I grew up with a lot of kids that their parents spoke nothing but Spanish, but all they spoke was English, right? And they spoke to their parents in English. Their parents understood this. And then now they're 20 something, 25 years old, 30 years old, 40, and they don't speak Spanish at all. And they're not able to communicate. And we call them the no sabo kids, the don't know kids. And it's bad because it's that situations where their parents out of fear subscribed to that necessity of like, oh, if you don't speak Spanish, there's no reason for you to be able to be questioned. If you don't act your ethnic culture, there's no reason for them to be suspicious of you. If you don't associate with this group or anything, if you anglicize yourself, right? If you whitewash yourself, you're going to be more accepting of it. But look at where we are right now. Look at where everybody is. I keep seeing it on TikTok. I keep seeing it on Instagram, and there's a plethora, and I do mean a plethora of kids and adults and people that say it's like, man, I kind of wish I had learned Spanish. I kind of wished everything of what the whole situation is to be able to help out. And then the same thing with that is like, now I don't understand. They're saying that they don't understand how their family, who told them to not speak Spanish, to not speak English, voted for somebody in the administration right now like that. And then now they're seeing the consequences, even though they told them, hey, don't put yourself in that situation, right? Don't make yourself a target. So it's really just disappointing, man. It's just really disappointing because the fear of not being able to try to continue your culture has been that exact same fear that has perpetuated the cycle of, oh, if I just try to assimilate as much as possible, if I vote for this, because it's never going to happen to me, I'm going to be safe. And then look at what happened. A bunch of people have already been deported.
Yeah, it's crazy. Do you think the Democrats take the Latino vote for granted?
Very much so. Very much so. Like I said, to each their own opinion. I don't associate with politics, any political party in any way or any spectrum. I'm up for the people person, and the Democratic Party has lost a lot of viability with both the Latino community and Asian and Black and African American communities for the exact same reason. Is like when you have a party that is literally driven by the whole narrative of that we are the party of change. We are the demographic, right? We are the other side of the United States. And yet they don't listen to the issues. They don't actually go through and follow through on what they're promising. It makes it really counterintuitive. So with the Latino Party, is like, how many more times did you need to try to pander, right, to a very specific group to be able to let them know, hey, we're on your side and we're going to do what we can to be able to help you and show you that now we're not just talking about it, we're going to be about it. It's a lot of those things that has me on that, like I said, non-conformist with any type of party, because like I said, I saw it with the Obama administration. Like I said, deportation happened. There's a lot of promises that Obama didn't follow through on with when he came in office, and he took a lot of the Latino vote with him when he went into office his first term. And then the second term is the exact same thing. Hey, we're going to try to do what we can for the farm workers. We're going to try to do what we can for the undocumented. And none of that ever happened. Same thing with John Kerry, when he was opposing, when he was trying to go against Bush for the first term, second term. I think it was the second term. Like I said, I was young enough to understand that, hey, John Kerry was doing a lot for the Democratic Party. But what I didn't know was the exact same situation. He had also been vying for a lot of the anti-immigration situations, the whole closing of the border, and then being a lot more stringent on local laws to be able to incarcerate people easier just out of minor offenses. So things like that are just like, the Democratic Party has lost a lot of viable credibility due to their backstabbing nature, and it's very relevant. Booker, the current head of the Democratic Party, like I said, personal opinion, he is not good for the party. He is not good for anybody that's currently in that administration, because he's had more than enough times to be able to stand up to the Republicans in office, to the Republicans, to the incumbents, to the new representatives, and even other people. If anything, AOC, who, like I said, I personally don't like her for other reasons, but she's doing a lot more for the party as a lower level Democratic representative. It's like, you can't, you're telling me that somebody with less experience within the political spectrum, and I get it, experience brings folly, because you think you're able to make the change. That doesn't make a difference. At least she's trying to make the change.
Yeah, what gets me but the Democrats is it seems like a lack of urgency. They just seem very kind of blasé. And in fact, it seems like everybody just seems kind of like, I don't know if it's like maybe protest burnout, I think that the whole George Floyd 2020 COVID thing, it kind of just like burnt out and demoralized a lot of people. And I think a lot of people feel that protest and voting is just ineffective. Like 90% of people sat out this 2024. No, I'm sorry, 90 million people sat out this 2024 election. Maybe that's the wrong figure, but a lot of people sat it out. And I think they just don't feel that change is possible. If you could like talk to like, or give advice to Democratic leadership, what would you tell them to do?
Understand that your political affiliation is going to be the one thing that's going to cause people to either be with you or against you. And I do mean that very, very true, because when you're talking about politics in general, when you're talking about politics, it's not about what you know. It's not about what you can change. It's about who you can persuade. It's about who you know and what you know about them. The Democratic Party knows a lot about its entire community and its entire demographic, very much to their detriment, that they ignore them. They ignore them more than they think that they do. California being one of the bluest states, and yet it's one of the worst out of all the states so far that has the highest gross per capita earnings in both its taxation and its revenue, is really one of the worst locations to be in. I said, I lived there for 4 years. I lived out in the desert, obviously, but the times I would go to San Diego from Central California is like you could see a lot of the changes and a lot of the problems that were wrong with California. So like I said, the fact that the Democratic Party knows its audience, knows its party backers, and still doesn't try to find a way to be able to persuade them even more to say, hey, look at the current situation that you are in because of us. But look at the current situation that you were in. Let's try to make some change. Let's try to make things better for ourselves. Or you know what? Due to their fear of losing their power in office, if that's even the case, a lot of people steer away from that, and people keep settling with the current situation because they don't know about any of these other parties, any of these other people that are running in office. So like I said, the best thing I can tell for the Democratic Party, if I could speak to them, is say that look and understand that your audience is not just made up of the people that you think you talk to. It's made up of everybody. It's even made up of the Republican backers. It's made out of people who are on the conservative right. It's not about trying to persuade everybody. It's about trying to persuade the correct people, trying to persuade the actual parties. They need to really, like, to be able to make a difference, honestly, in these next 2 years for the next elections, they need to start canvassing all of the community leaders. Right? There's a lot of administrations and organizations, either charities or volunteer organizations, that are out there doing a lot of work that the Democrats are talking about, but they don't canvass any of them. The fact that Kamala was actually able to get, I think, 5 different Zoom calls and earn millions and millions to be able to back the campaign, both from white men for Kamala Harris, black women for Kamala Harris, Latinos for Kamala Harris, all of these groups, like, they were able to do that. You're telling me that you can't go you can't send out an email. You can't make a phone call and say, hey, X organization, we want to talk to you as a leader to be able to help us with these next elections, these midterm elections, to be able to try to persuade and deter the current situation that is being out of our power in Congress, in the Senate, in the House of Representatives. You're telling me they can't do that? It's like, it's not unjustifiable. So it's a doable thing. And like I said, that's one of the things I think they really need to do, is actually be out there for the people, with the people.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask you this. What do you think about the whole concept of a sanctuary city? And do you think it's helpful or harmful? What's your whole opinion on that?
Man, that's a little difficult, because it's, like I said, I'm for it. I am for the sanctuary city, because there's certain places that are able to have better opportunities for anybody who comes into the country undocumented. The problem is, though, is that where are the funds coming from? Where's the infrastructure to be able to help out already the dwindling situation? There's a lot of homelessness problems everywhere, all over the country. And then now you're bringing in more people, undocumented people, and possibly causing them to be homeless. It's like, I get it. Two completely different situations. One's coming here by choice, and the other one has been there either out of their volition or out of their circumstances. Right. But there's a lot of things to come to questions like, where are these funds coming from? Where's all this situation? Who is stepping up to be able to help all of these communities to be able to take this influx of immigrants, these workers? Right. So to me, it's like, I'm for it. Sanctuary cities, they can infrastructure, they can make it, we can always rally around the communities. But to what extent is that community, this new group of people, going to be a burden to the situation, where we end up having the whole problem, like you guys said, like we had talked about in the last interview, the Tren de Aragua, right in Aurora, Colorado, things like that, which, doing a little bit more research, besides that one video, there was literally nothing else specific to it being like an actual takeover, which is, like I said, goes back to a lot of the media situations, and it causes a lot, and it could cause a lot of that same situation. It's like, oh, immigrants are flooding the streets, immigrants are causing all these problems. It's like, yes, but look at the current situation that's already in these cities, in this situation. There's no infrastructure to be able to house the homelessness, or to be able to have them, or there's no infrastructure to be able to inform people in these situations. Like, what do you think is going to happen? People are, nature kicks in a very specific way when a human being is in a certain situation. I can't blame them. Can I excuse them for it? No, not at all. But you can't blame them.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think that's one of the reasons why Trump won, is that times are getting hard. A little bit harder. Americans still have one of the highest standard of livings anywhere in the world. It's, when I say hard, it's nothing like what it will be like in Mexico or any other country, but it's just a little bit more inconvenience. And when things start to get inconvenienced, people start looking at like other people and trying to find somebody to blame. And, Trump is giving them, he's saying, hey, it's the undocumented, it's the DEI. This is why your life is slightly inconvenienced right now. It's a scapegoat, basically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
What would you say to people to counteract that? Like someone who was thinking about, or who did vote for Donald Trump, what would you say to them?
Look at your paycheck. The last time that you looked at your paycheck, who was the person that was taking the most money out of everything in your deductions column? That's my biggest questions always to somebody. Is like, before you start blaming anybody around you, before you start blaming me, or you start blaming the person that supposedly took your job, look at your paycheck. Now, understand where all of that money that you, that I, that everybody else has been deducted and have been literally put aside, right? And then look at everything that's happened in the past 20 years. Excuse 9/11. 9/11 is a moot point in any situation right now, because, like I said, there's a very specific way of putting 9/11, but this is not the place. But look at everything else that has happened within the past 20 years, right? From 2005 up until 2020, 2025. Financial collapse, the housing market, the economic standard, the loss of jobs and manufacturing in certain locations. Look at all these things and then tell me who is the one person making this. Who are the people, I guess, the people that are making these decisions to be able to stop all of this for you to be able to earn your house, earn your home, right? There's a reason why the what do you call it? The minimum wage is still, I think, $7.25 now or $8, and maybe in certain places. It's like there's a reason. It's like don't blame Carlos, don't blame Manuel, don't blame Maria, don't blame Elia. Blame the people that are actually making these decisions, because like I said last time, it's like you're starting to blame the wrong people when it comes to your situation that you were put into. Like I said, there's you can't necessarily point the finger and say it's like, oh, you put yourself in this situation because the stuff's like, no, there's extenuating factors about that. You can't afford healthcare because the healthcare industry is all jacked up. You can't afford a house because of the housing crisis in 2008 and then the recession in 2011. You can't afford eggs right now because of a pandemic. A bird flu pandemic, not because of the tariffs or anything. It's like, no, there's extenuating things. Like, but look at everything that's happening and what are the actual factors. I think the biggest thing to be able to let anybody who did vote for Trump and are literally finding out right now what the consequences are is that the misinformation that you're allowing to let yourself be persuaded by is the determining factor on why your current situation is like this. Like I said, man, like, I could have been like anybody else and like, you know what, I'm in the military. And it's like, oh yeah, go America, go team. And it's all these illegals. I'm here to defend the country against these illegals. Like, no, like I understand that. And like I said, I've heard that many times during the first term of Trump's first term. And then even coming on the second one. And it's like, I've heard it. It's like, oh, it's all these illegals. It's all these people. And like, they're being incarcerated because they broke the law and all that stuff. It's like, I'll give you the worst example on why the misinformation and why you shouldn't be so proud of the fact that Trump got elected. And legitimately, it sounds really, really hypocritical, but look at what Biden did. Biden did literally right before he left office. He pardoned his entire family. What does that tell you about the political system? It's not Trump. It's the political system in themselves. So, and what just happened to 1,600 people that literally committed treason? Former veterans committed treason into the United States.
Yep. It's crazy. You know what gets me about, I understand why he, pardoned his son, Hunter. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I understand because, it's his son. But my thing is, like, what did the rest of his family do? Now I'm starting to wonder, like, was his wife doing something? It's kind of crazy, and oh, yeah. That was wild. And again, it goes back to how this whole team politics we have. If it was a Republican who did that, there would be outrage. Mm-hmm. But when he did it, the liberal media made excuses for it. But that was wild, man. So, there's a lot of debate about whether undocumented immigrants contribute to or take away from the U.S. economy. What's your perspective on this?
Same thing, man. I paid my taxes one way or another. The government is going to get their money one way or another, whether it was through my parents when they were undocumented, whether it was the individual taxpayer identification number, the what do you call it, the sales tax on whatever food or other purchases we made. Is like things like taxes are going to get paid for, man. Like the undocumented community makes and contributes just as much as any legal citizen does to the final bottom line of the United States economy. And it's the exact same thing that we've been seeing for the past 20 years. 20 years is just like we're taking jobs that aren't being manned by anybody else. that money that is being funneled into our employment also gets taxed, right? Whatever material that has to be made or built for whatever houses, that gas that has to be spent to transport us and our families, or us and our other employees to the job sites, it's all being taxed, from enterprise to the government to contracting to low level jobs. Everything in the United States is taxed, however you want to look at it. And the fact that the undocumented community are the ones that are making these money and these contributions without being able to reap any of this in the downtimes is the worst part, because a lot of the people that pay into the tax system aren't able to claim, unemployment. My dad, for 22 years of his life, he was not able to claim unemployment during the hard winters of Northern Nevada. And anybody can tell you that has lived either in the Rockies, in Colorado, or up north in the United States, even in the Midwest, can tell you, is like, when it freezes, it freezes. And if you're an outdoor worker and you're not able to collect unemployment, what do? You try to find whatever you can. So that's what he did. And like I said, those are jobs that are still taxed one way or another. It's like, you look at the way that the economy works, right? There's always a lull in the amount of money that's generated in certain amount of months. Now let's take a quick guess in certain regions, where is the lowest amount of money in what time frame that this thing is being generated. It's going to be in the colder months, because people don't want to go out, people don't travel, people don't want to spend money. So it's like, you can't blame the economy for fluctuation, right? You don't blame it. You don't blame the illegal immigrants for the money that isn't being earned in winter months. It's like, no, you blame the economy, you blame the times, you blame the situation. But the moment that certain things aren't being paid, that certain things are technically not being taxed, just looking for a scapegoat. I think that's the worst part, looking for a scapegoat. So to say that anybody in the undocumented community isn't contributed, or they don't know that how much is being contributed, haven't taken a look at what makes everything happen on their day-to-day basis, from how their clothes are made, how their food gets to wherever it is, where it's picked at, how it's transported, much even less if their floors are clean. Look at these huge buildings, man. Like, I guarantee you, at least 1 out of every 5 people in that building that is in the janitorial service or working in some type of service or customer service job is going to be undocumented, working under somebody else's social, working under the table, or just working under a different program. But the taxes are being paid, but they're contributing to it. They contribute to it one way or another. Same thing by transporting themselves to their jobs. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things, man. It really is.
Yeah. I used to work at a hotel as a security guard. And one thing I realized was that everybody on the staff, like the housing staff, not the front desk staff, but the housing and maintenance, they were all undocumented, every single one of them, And what it showed to me is that America really can't survive without either unpaid or underpaid labor. That's like a core part of capitalism, So this whole thing is that whatever Trump does, and all the people that he's going to deport, at the end of the day, illegal immigration or undocumented immigration isn't going anywhere, because America needs it to survive, And that's the crazy thing. Like, you have these undocumented people who are working here, don't have health care, don't have any kind of benefits. And these CEOs who own these companies, they're reaping the benefits. They're getting millions of dollars. And I wish people would focus their anger at these CEOs and these billionaires and not at the little guy. But, it's divide and conquer. That's how it's always been. That's how the people are managed, man. It's really crazy. But hey, this has been a great talk as always. Is there anything else you want to add to the conversation before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I think we covered a good amount of the points, Isaac. I mean, like I said, I appreciate the talk, and like I said, it's I guess to kind of like wrap it up and complete is like it's all about information. It's like us currently as a country, and especially as legal voters, and like I said, even as little as we are in the social space as representatives of our communities, it's the exact same way. Like, I think we have to put that responsibility on ourselves to be able to communicate and inform as many of our listeners, our family, anybody that's able to listen or is willing to listen about the current situation. And with that, I mean, like I said, thank you again for bringing me back on the show and letting me, I guess, rant about a little bit of this situation, but same thing to inform people that just like them, I'm an American. I'm an American just like them. And I understand their struggles and everything that's going on. And I'm not blind to it. If anything, there's still time, and there's going to come a time that we're going to have to really, really speak about it. And it's not going to be a pretty time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things are going. I feel that something is coming down the pipeline. I don't know, man, but this whole Trump thing, it's getting really crazy. You know, people don't like to make comparisons to like Nazi Germany, but I see a lot of comparisons, just to see like how quickly everybody just kind of like got in line under this guy and then supported him. It feels like something bad is coming. And, we just got to stay aware and be prepared, man, but something is bad. Yeah. Something's coming down the pipeline.
Very true. I mean, if I can say one last thing, just understand the Bill of Rights exists for specific reasons. Like I said, I'm not a big gun-toting guy, like, and everything, but like, you have a Second Amendment right. There's, like I said, I'm in the military, man. My personal views and everything don't reflect anything on it. But if it comes down to defending myself and defending my family, I'll wear the flag and the uniform as I need to, and I will do what I need to within the standard of the Bill of Rights, within my oath of enlistment to be able to protect my family and the people around me that deserve to be protected, that need to be protected. So it's, like I said, it's not bad advice, but also you have a liberty to do so. So
yeah, I agree. All right, then, man, I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you for coming on, and take care.
Thank you very much, Isaac.
That's a wrap for this episode of Bright Brains, where curiosity meets conversation. If you enjoyed the ride, make sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It helps more minds find their way here. You can keep up with me on Facebook at Bright Brains Podcast, on BlueSky at brightbrainzpod.bsky.social, and last but certainly not least, Instagram at bright_brains_podcast. And remember, that's Bright Brains with a Z. So check me out for behind the scenes content, episode updates, and more thought-provoking discussions. Stay sharp, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time. Keep that brain bright.